Today, we are going to explore if Europe is overtaking the US as the startup capital of the world. Hello, and welcome to Stats Quo. Every year, thousands of entrepreneurs set out to build the next billion-dollar technology company. For decades, there seemed to be one obvious place to do it: Silicon Valley. It's home to companies like Apple, Google, Meta, and NVIDIA, and for many founders, it became the global symbol of innovation. But recently, the conversation has started to change. Europe is producing more startups than ever before, attracting record investment in artificial intelligence and creating technology hubs that are competing on the world stage. So, is Europe becoming the world's startup hub? Or does Silicon Valley still dominate when we look beyond the headlines? So, what does the data actually tell us? Our aim at Stats Quo is to explore topical subjects through the data in 5 minutes. No fluff. If you enjoy data-driven analysis, please like this video, subscribe to Stats Quo, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Why it matters. This question matters far beyond the startup community. If you're an entrepreneur, it could influence where you decide to launch your business. If you're looking for a career in technology, it affects where the fastest growing opportunities may be. For investors, it's about deciding where the next generation of global companies will come from. And for governments, successful startups create high-value jobs, attract talent, generate tax revenue, and drive long-term economic growth. The countries that build tomorrow's most successful technology companies are also likely to shape tomorrow's global economy. So this isn't simply a competition between Europe and Silicon Valley. It's a question about where innovation is happening and where it could happen next. How we investigated to answer it properly, we ignored opinions and focused on the evidence. We analyzed startup creation, venture capital investment, unicorn companies, founder activity, university ecosystems, artificial intelligence investment, and company valuations. Our research combined data from Dealroom, Atomico's State of European Tech, Crunchbase, PitchBook, the OECD, the World Bank, LinkedIn, and CB Insights. Each organization measures a different part of the startup ecosystem. Some track investment, others follow company creation, founder activity, or technology employment. No single dataset answers the question on its own, but together they provide a remarkably clear picture of how Europe's startup landscape has evolved. As we compared the numbers, 5 themes kept appearing again and again. First, we'll look at whether Europe is actually creating more startups than ever before. Then we'll see whether investors are backing those companies with enough capital to compete globally. Next, we'll examine whether Europe is producing more billion-dollar unicorns, or if those success stories are still the exception. After that, we'll explore one of Europe's biggest competitive advantages, its talent, and whether founders are choosing to build their companies closer to home instead of moving to Silicon Valley. And finally, we'll answer perhaps the most important question of all. Even if Europe is improving across every measure, is it actually challenging Silicon Valley where it matters most? Building the world's biggest technology companies? Let's see what the data reveals. Finding one: Europe is creating more startups than ever before. The first thing we discovered is that Europe is creating more startups than ever before. Over the past decade, technology ecosystems have expanded rapidly across the continent. London remains Europe's largest startup hub, but cities like Paris, Berlin, Stockholm, Amsterdam, Barcelona, and Lisbon have all experienced remarkable growth. At first, that might not sound surprising, but here's where it gets interesting. Europe is no longer relying on one dominant technology city. Instead, it has developed multiple specialized ecosystems. London has become a global fintech leader. Paris is rapidly growing its artificial intelligence sector. Berlin continues to attract software and mobility startups. Stockholm has built an impressive track record in consumer technology. Rather than one Silicon Valley, Europe is creating an entire network of innovation hubs. That diversity makes the ecosystem stronger and more resilient, but building startups is only the beginning. The next question is whether investors are backing them. Finding to investment has reached historic levels. When we compared venture capital funding over time, the growth was impossible to ignore. European startups now attract tens of billions in venture capital every year. Investment has increased dramatically compared with a decade ago, particularly in artificial intelligence, climate technology, fintech, and enterprise software. That tells us investors increasingly believe European founders can build globally competitive businesses. However, the data also shows an important difference. Although Europe has made enormous progress, the United States still attracts significantly larger late-stage funding rounds. In simple terms, Europe has become much better at helping startups get started. America still has an advantage when companies need hundreds of millions of dollars to become global giants. Investment fuels growth, but money alone doesn't create successful companies. Finding number 3, Europe is producing more unicorns. The next question we asked was whether Europe is producing businesses that can truly compete on the world stage. The answer is yes. Europe is producing more unicorn companies than at any point in its history. A unicorn is a privately owned startup valued at more than $1 billion. The United Kingdom continues to lead Europe, while France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands have all produced internationally recognized technology companies. Artificial intelligence has become one of the fastest-growing sectors, helping cities like London and Paris attract increasing amounts of global investment. This matters because unicorns demonstrate something important. They show that European startups aren't simply surviving, they're scaling into major international businesses. But successful ecosystems need more than companies and investment. They also need people. Finding number 4, talent is becoming Europe's greatest advantage. When we looked at the talent behind these startups, one of Europe's biggest competitive advantages became clear. Europe produces millions of highly educated graduates every year. Its universities consistently rank among the best in the world. It has deep pools of engineering talent, strong research institutions, and an increasingly experienced generation of founders. Perhaps even more importantly, many entrepreneurs who once felt they had to move to California are now choosing to stay in Europe. Lower operating costs, improving access to funding, and stronger local startup communities mean founders can increasingly build global companies without leaving the continent. Talent attracts investment. Investment creates successful companies. Successful companies inspire the next generation of founders. That's how startup ecosystems mature. But despite all this progress, one major difference still separates Europe from Silicon Valley. Finding number 5, Silicon Valley still leads in scale. When we compared the world's largest technology companies, Silicon Valley continues to dominate. The United States still produces more mega-cap technology businesses. It attracts the largest venture capital rounds, and it remains home to many of the world's most valuable public technology companies. Europe has become exceptionally good at creating startups. Its biggest challenge is helping more of those startups grow into the next Google, Microsoft, or NVIDIA. So, what happens when we put all of these findings together? The bigger picture. When we step back and connect all of this evidence, a much clearer picture begins to emerge. Europe is no longer simply producing the occasional success story. It has built multiple mature startup ecosystems supported by world-class universities, engineering talent, growing investment networks, and experienced founders. That represents a remarkable transformation over the past decade. But becoming the world's startup hub isn't simply about producing more startups. It's about consistently producing the world's biggest and most influential technology companies. And that's where Silicon Valley still holds an important advantage. Which brings us back to the question we asked at the beginning. The verdict. So, is Europe becoming the world's startup hub? The evidence points towards a balanced answer. Yes, Europe has established itself as one of the world's leading startup ecosystems. Startup creation is rising, investment has grown dramatically, talent is thriving, and the number of unicorn companies continues to increase. But the data also shows that Silicon Valley remains the global leader when it comes to scale. Its largest companies are still bigger, its funding rounds are still larger, and its ecosystem continues to produce many of the world's biggest technology businesses. The gap has narrowed significantly, but it hasn't disappeared. Looking ahead, the next trend we'll be watching is artificial intelligence. AI is already reshaping where entrepreneurs build companies, where investors place capital, and which cities become tomorrow's technology leaders. Whether Europe can turn today's momentum into the next generation of global technology giants is one of the most interesting business stories of the coming decade. We'll continue tracking the data as new evidence becomes available. What should we analyze next? If you enjoyed this analysis, please subscribe to Stats Quo, where we help millions understand the world through data, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Which European city do you think has the best chance of becoming Europe's next global technology powerhouse?